We're going to go ahead and talk about weaknesses and basically all the different ways we've come up with to kill it. There are many, many ways to kill this boss. He's pretty weak compared to a lot of the bosses that we'll be going over, but his reward is absolutely incredible. So definitely make sure you stay tuned for that. So we'll just go ahead and spawn in the boss here. As you can see, he's got this shield, which reflects your projectiles. Note that it does not reflect the modifiers. You can see that the damage field is being removed from it as I shoot. And you can do some pretty decent damage to him. I would say any, like, good fast shooting wand can kill him. But only if you're willing to get up close and personal. So this is a really dangerous technique. Wait for his shield to drop, and then just hold down left click right in center of mass. You can see I was able to do some pretty significant damage there with this rather basic wand. And yeah, that's a way of killing him with any single wand in the game. However, you saw that I did take a pretty significant amount of damage there. Not a very safe method, so we're going to go over some significantly stronger methods of killing the boss.
Yeah, and to shortly mention about the stats of the boss, he has 1000 HP, so that's the target number, how much damage you need to deal. He takes 0 slice damage by default. He takes 0.4 from fire, 0.6 from electric, 0.3 from projectiles, and 0.7 from drill. But explosions are 100% effective, and in fact, in most cases, his shield is going to double that damage.
Yes, and we'll be showing that off right now. So let's go ahead and show off just a super basic wand. We're going to show off Plasma Beam. Plasma Beam is just a really effective spell. It does absolutely nuclear damage. Note that his blood can block a lot of the damage, and if he walks into your Plasma Beam, he will turn it around on you, as you can see. So keep an eye out for that. But you can see that it does very, very nice damage to him, which is super great. Obviously, your Plasma Beam wand probably won't be shooting this fast, but it definitely does the trick, especially in a pinch.
Yeah, and you do not want it to home onto the boss. You want it to fire from a distance.
Yeah, that is a very good point to make. So let's go ahead and show off... what should we show off next? Let's show off an explosive build. So this boss is very, very interesting with its hitboxes. Latala, you want to talk about that while I fight this boss?
Yeah, so a small explosion fired from above is not going to reach his hitbox, actually. So things like a magic missile fired from above will only deal projectile damage because the explosion radius is not enough to hit the hitbox. But from below, explosions will reach. And also combined with the shield, which can capture the explosion and double the explosion damage, most explosive spells deal significant damage. But this one that was just shown off needs you to also be in the explosion, basically. So you'll need Ambrosia or explosion immunity.
Or an absolute ton of HP, like we have here. All right. So that is that wand. I guess we'll show off the Summon Large Explosive box as well, which is similarly effective. The very important note and difference between Summon Explosive box and Summon Large Explosive box is that Summon Large Explosive box is much, much harder to explode. Also note that if he has his shield up, he will basically be immune to explosive damage. Unless he is able to claim ownership over the shot. So that's another important little note. All right.
Oh, actually lost a life there.
Yeah, that's okay. We're still here. We're still here. Okay. So next up, we're going to go ahead and show off a couple of the throwers. Both Personal Tentacler and Personal Lightning Caster are extremely, extremely effective against this boss. Due to his claiming mechanics, which, Latali, would you like to go over that right now?
Yeah, so because these two throwers, create things that either hit him right away or have a short enough lifetime that they will explode within the reach of the hitbox of the boss. they work really well, and the shield will add 15 projectile damage to the tentacles, and it will double the explosive damage of those lightning spells created. So his shield is actually his own downfall with these spells.
Right. And it's definitely a very effective method at getting this boss killed very quickly. All you have to do is shoot and retreat. You can see eventually he'll put his own shield up. And yeah, he takes absolutely immense damage to those spells. So very, very effective method of getting the kills. Note that they can't stack the personal effects. Wait, can they stack? I'm pretty sure they cannot. Let me double check this just to make sure. Because that would be kind of cool if they could, but oh, they do stack. Look at that. All right. Well, you can't... So for absolutely absurd levels of damage, you could throw them both on if you find them. However, either one is more than enough to get the kill. So that's good to know. So next up, we'll go ahead and show off Explosive Detonator. Now, Explosive Detonator is a spell that I've been experimenting a lot with lately. You can see that it is the only spell that can be used to... actually, is it the only spell? Let me double check. There might be a couple of other spells. The spells to X might be able to convert his shield. I want to see if that works. Let me quickly test that. Yeah, so it does.
Oh.
Yeah, so that is a really effective method. Okay, cool. So it's not the only spell that can delete his shield. All of the spells to X spells will be able to delete his shield. However, Detonate is much, much more common than any of the spells to X. So that is noteworthy in itself. And it's much, much more spammable as it is an unlimited spell. If you get right on top of him with a drill or any spell that has like just a super limited lifetime, you could even use like a chainsaw with the damage up. You can get on top of him and deal really, really good damage. However, note how much damage I took from that. Explosive Detonator deals, or actually gets captured by the boss and converted into pure explosive damage. Because it's got a super short lifetime, it will instantly explode on the boss, dealing immense damage to both you and the boss. So have explosion immunity if you want to use Explosive Detonator in that way against the boss. But it is very, very effective. And as we just showed, spells to X are another effective method, specifically spells to magic missiles, and I'm sure any spells to explosives would be really, really strong against them. So feel free to give that a try. So, put this on here. You can have the big magic guard rapid firing. Perfect. So, go ahead and spawn in the boss. So you can see that I can convert the magic missiles while it's on him, but the problem is while he's moving around, it's very, very unlikely for him to take damage from it. So we want to wait for his shield to be down to fire our barrage, and you can see that it's much, much more effective that way. Note that we were using big magic guard to do the overwhelming majority of the damage there. However, a big magic guard is definitely inferior to small magic guard due to basically just the placement of the projectiles.
Yeah, the same issue that Square Barrier has over...
Yeah, it's just to kind of show it. No, the bridge! You gotta be kidding me. I needed the bridge!
I mean, you could fly to a parallel world. Oh, do those have a bridge? I don't think they do. And you died.
God damn it.
Alright, well, this boss has 800 HP, which is not a lot, but he takes mostly 30% damage from any damage source that you can deal. Like explosions, projectile damage, stuff like that. He only takes 30%, so he is pretty durable. But what makes him really durable is his shield, which makes him totally immune. After one hit of damage, he puts his shield up for a short duration, where he takes no damage when the shield is up.
Right, but
So,
there is a caveat to that, and we're going to be abusing that a bunch today.
Yeah, there's a few things in the game that can bypass those shield effects, those shield protections, and namely you will hear about them in other boss videos. But mainly the two spells are Plasma and area damage.
Right. So, we've just set up a crap ton of plasma beam crosses, and we're going to activate the boss. So, we're using Hollow Egg as our trigger. That way, we can preemptively set up a trap. Walking over here is so there's a first trigger right here, right? And then there's another trigger over here. And when you walk back, it's going to spawn in the boss right there. So now, when he comes up, the eggs will crack, and you can see it does a bunch of damage. He actually moved really, really quickly. So because of that, we're actually going to take a crap ton of damage. This is why you should always have your ambrosia at the ready. But we did manage to kill the boss. You can see just how explosive this boss fight can be. And the rewards for this boss are Matosade, which is an incredibly useful digging spell, and Meteorosade, which is a very niche explosive spell. And do you know the tier of these wands off by heart by chance, Latali?
Yeah, it's a tier 5 and a tier 6 no shuffle wand.
Right.
So one of them is tier 6, I think the yellow one.
Yeah.
And the other one is no shuffle tier 5, which is the same wand that you can get from an anvil.
So theoretically some very nice spells and very likely a very nice wand can be found here. So just for reference, a tier 6 wand can only be found on Dragon and nowhere else. Is that correct? Like, I guess this boss as well. It doesn't spawn naturally in the world?
It does spawn in the Temple of the Art and Wizard Den.
Okay, so there you go. So it's a super late game style wand then,
yeah,
which you can acquire
basically the best
very
ones that you can find in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And also to explain about the plasma a bit more. First of all, it does go through the shield that the boss has that normally makes him immune to most damage. But another thing is that the wands that the boss spawns copies attacks that are nearby that hit the boss. So copying that plasma will make it hit the boss so many more times. Which is very useful for us.
And you could see because the boss didn't originally copy the plasma beam, he never walked through the center of the plasma beam, which is how the boss gets to copy in the first place. Whatever projectile is passing through him at the time is the projectile that he will choose to duplicate. So the first time around, he didn't get into the center of that plasma cross, but when I shot him over here, he did. So that's exactly why the plasma cross works the way it does. And it is easily the best plasma of the 3, in my opinion, to use for the kill. But we will be showing off a bunch of different kills. And so this is an Omega Saw Blade with homing. Omega Saw Blade is another one of the spells that is extremely effective against this boss. So let's just go ahead and spawn him in really quick. And I'm going to make sure that I'm ambrosiaed up so that way hopefully he doesn't kill me. You can see that was a very quick kill. And he's just firing off a massive amount of explosives at me. And, yeah. We managed to wait out the Omega Saw Blade, and we survived with minimal HP. You can see another 2 wands there. Now, what can happen is the boss, rather than stealing the Omega Saw Blade, you can see that it was firing off a bunch of double projectiles there. And that's why you want to use sort of the Spark Bolt double trigger rather than like a Hollow Egg. You want to make sure you're using the Hollow Egg so that way it doesn't replicate the projectiles. Sorry, I did a bad job explaining. We retake that? Yeah, do you want to give it a shot?
Actually, I was looking up. It's actually a tier 5 no shuffle and a tier 6 one. The tier 6 doesn't have to be a no shuffle.
Yeah, I knew it was shuffle yes or no, but
yeah.
I wasn't sure which one it was.
What were you explaining? Sorry, I was looking that up.
No worries. I was just saying that you should be careful with these sort of triggers because often they'll be replicated rather than your actual payload. Yeah.
The trigger can be the one copied, and you don't want that happening.
Right. Let's just go ahead and spawn him in again. And you can see here that he is replicating primarily, or he was replicating a bunch of the incorrect shot, which is really not what you want.
You saw a bunch of blue triggers flying around, but eventually he did also copy the Omega Saw.
Right, and as Latali was saying, you can get shuffle yeses. The tier 6 wand has a chance at being a shuffle yes, which is unfortunate, but you can see that the spells you can acquire off of these tier 6s are immense. Very, very useful spells potentially can be found on these wands. Okay.
Yeah. So only the tier 5 is going to always be no shuffle. The tier 6 can be either.
Right. Okay, so next off we'll show area damage. And why don't you speak to that a little bit more? So area damage isn't really a term that I've used to describe in the past. But
yeah, damage field. Oh, yeah, I always forget because in the code it's area damage.
Right.
But damage field, that's a strange modifier because it doesn't actually it doesn't come from the spell it's attached to. It's its own entity. It creates its own entity, and there's very little info on that entity. It's just an area that deals damage, nothing else. It's an entity, it's an area, and deals damage. So yeah, it's also not caught by basically any shield. Like shields don't see that thing, so it goes through all of that.
Right, and due to that, damage field tends to be useful on a couple of different bosses, but particularly useful on this boss. As you can see, it just does very, very significant damage. Of course, you need to have the ability to withstand or avoid all of that potential damage coming your way one way or another. I would recommend a teleport wand, but Ambrosia is just as effective. And you could see that it replicated that spark bolt trigger rather than the circle of shielding. And yeah, just a simple homing material with damage field is extremely, extremely effective at getting that boss killed. Note that, like, if you were to try and do a similar thing with piercing, it would not work at all, because the boss has all sorts of resistances to multi-hit attacks. So you want to avoid doing multi-hit attacks as much as possible. Another really effective way of killing this boss is doing one big singular hit, and Spells to Power is a common culprit for that. But you could do that with just like a bunch of really powerful spells like Heavy Shot and Divide Buys. And note that a lot of people use Trigger as a delivery method. If you're going to use a Trigger as your delivery method, make sure that you apply a light shot or something that reduces the damage of your trigger down to 0. So that way all of your damage is delivered in a single frame.
Yeah, because the boss puts his shield up when taking damage, and if the trigger deals no damage, he won't see that.
Right, so now we're going to go ahead and show off a Spells to Power wand. This is one you've probably seen before. But it's a very simplistic build. We're going to be using Square Barrier into a couple of Spark Bolts, and it's a very simplistic build. Doesn't really need too much finding. These projectiles could be just about anything that you can hit the boss with consistently with. As you can see, the first shot spawns in the barrier, and the second shot spawns in the damage. Latali, do you want to explain how the Spells to Power wand works?
Yeah, so Spells to Power, it has two different ways of taking damage from projectiles that work. It takes full damage from a high damage projectile, or if there's many projectiles that deal very little damage, it has a minimum amount of damage that it copies. Like, even if the barrier particles, like, it sees the barrier particles dealing basically no damage, like, it's a very small amount, but there's just a lot of them. It will increase that small amount to the minimum in the spell. So Square Barrier spawns in like hundreds of these particles. So hundreds of those small hits add up to a big amount of damage.
Right. This one's more of a speedrun centric build, but it is extremely, extremely useful if you're just looking to do minimum spell requirements. So these are spells that you could technically all find in a single shop in the first Holy Mountain. So any timer into Square Barrier, and then you cast spells to Giga Saw Blades. So you could even use a Hollow Egg to spawn them in and have like a bunch of them stacked up. But we'll spawn in the boss here, and then if I fire that, you can see that I get absolutely immense damage from the saws. You can see I took a bunch of damage there too. I would recommend being around a corner for this one, but it is just an incredible way of absolutely exploding this boss. I'll show that off again here because it is very, very cool. So one of those and one of those. Try again. And you can see...
Yeah, it's better if you have a timer with a bit shorter duration, so that the square barrel will spawn closer to you, between you and the boss.
Right. And another really important point to make with these Giga Saw Blades is they are not random. They will always travel left. Always. So you know where they're going to be going every single time. They're nice and consistent in that regard. And you could use a smaller barrier as well. Square barrier just happens to create the most particles, which makes it very effective in that regard. All right. Next, let's see here.
Did you show Ambrosia and Omega Saw?
I did not. Oh wait, well I think we kind of did, didn't we? When we were doing the... Yeah, we did.
Okay.
Let's see. Spawn this puppy in. And, yeah, I mean, most of these have been shown. I guess I could show off the detonate spells one, too. That I made. Do you think I should do that? I don't think I've shown it to you.
That works on this boss.
Oh, it works. Let me show it to you really quick. It's very, very silly. So let me just double check.
The ones that the boss spawns, you can actually delete those before the ones come out. So the boss won't even be able to copy anything.
Yep. So if I do this, and then I spawn in the boss. So detonate spells is very, very effective against this boss. He cannot shoot at all as long as it's active. And he's just completely neutered. You can be directly on top of where he spawns his polymorph shots and everything. You can see they're just straight up being deleted every single time. And you can see I'm just kind of tapping him, because if I keep it on him the whole time, if I wait, I can do bigger hits. But it's a very slow way to kill the boss, but assuming you have just a detonate spells and a chainsaw and a mana, you can kill this boss with literally zero thought put in. It's pretty incredible. All right, here we go. Well, I guess I'll maybe like speed up this boss fight. There we go.
Yeah, that's why I wasn't talking too much. You can speed that up.
Okay. So, what else should we show off? I don't know how many more of these need to be shown. Like, some of these are like duplicate style wands. Let me load this one in.
This boss is pretty straightforward.
Yeah. Not really too much you need to worry about. Because we already talked about plasmas, so we don't need to show off the other plasmas. Oh, we do need to show off personal gravity field, though. Alright, and one of the last things that is very effective against this boss is personal gravity field. So you can see, now that I've got personal gravity field on him, pretty much everything, except the odd stray shot here and there, is going to be contained within that small little area. Of course, you do still need to be wary. It's a dangerous boss, and he can get the odd shot off, so we're gonna wait out this blindness. Somewhere safe. Here we go. Hopefully this is fine. We got our Ambrosia on us. We're nice and cozy. Nothing to worry about. There we go. Now we can go back to fighting him. And while we're showing this off, another great thing to note is just how much damage Giga Saw does to this boss. So you can see that he takes the full slice damage of 63. Yeah, it's a pretty effective method for killing him. And be careful when he dies, because he will shoot all of those shots that he's gathered up all at once. So make sure that you're very far away from him. Otherwise, you're going to die horribly. But yeah, there you go. That's another method is personal gravity field. Definitely not the most comfy method, but it does function.
Okay.
All right. For this last boss kill, we're going to be going ahead and using this statue to abuse Essence to Power, which takes the max health of this statue and is going to deal a percentage of that to the boss. And basically, it's very similar to the Spells to Power build, except it requires you to have telekinesis to get the statue up here. Otherwise, you're going to have a really hard time getting this boss kill. But let's go ahead and show this off. You can see one shot did 200, and I think it can do around like 500 with this wand build. But note that you need to be within like a radius of the statue, and the boss can eat the statue. So this strategy can have some troubles to it, that's for certain. But if you're in a pinch, then it can be a functional strategy. So what I'm looking for is the big blue box there, and you can see I got the big hit, and that killed him in one shot. There you go. The boss is going to spawn inside of this egg, and I guess this is where approach comes into play. If you want to talk about that a little bit, Latali, what are your preferred approaches for this boss?
Yeah, like some people say that it's better to come from the side, some people say it's better to come from the top. I usually just especially if it's a speedrun, I come from the top and the top corner, the top left corner of the spawn area is where I try to aim because it's closest to the edge of the egg. I just want to get in there as fast as possible. Right.
So, to speak to that a little bit, I think that when people are saying one way is best, it really just means that the important part about this boss is to get comfortable with approaching from a particular position. And I personally approach from the top here as well. So
yeah, because it's the closest distance to the trigger area, so
right. So this gets you there.
What is fastest? Yep. And some things about the boss. He has just a couple of attacks that you need to care about. His head has a bite attack that you can block with melee immunity, but it's not actually melee damage. It's bite damage, so if you have somehow made melee damage heal you, it's not going to help you here. And he has those other attacks which deal fire and projectile damage. The fire breath, as you can see.
As well as the constant tail pulsing. Very good to note.
And those are pretty easy to dodge, but when he does this charge attack, you have to watch out for the head because there's the fire breath and his head deals a ton of damage.
As you can see. So yeah, being melee immune and repulsion in this fight will basically make you immune to the majority of the fight. And would you like to speak about the resistances a little bit by chance, Latali?
Yeah, okay. So so this boss is basically not very resistant to many things. The most resistance that he has is to electric, explosion, and fire with steel. Electric is 0.3, so that's the most resistant he is. And fire, explosion, and ice he takes half from. But everything else he takes full damage from. And he isn't even immune to touch of spells.
Right.
Like most bosses are touch immune, he is not.
So you can see, despite him being not touch immune, every part of his body is touch immune except for the head. So you can see I have to land that long distance cast on the head, otherwise it's not going to work. And I believe, is that the same thing for explosives as well? We can go ahead and test that with a magic missile really quick. So this boss is normally quite weak to all sorts of different effects, except in very specific instances where you're not dealing damage to the right spot. So let's go ahead and test that while we're at it. We'll give this what the there's two dragons now. There we go. All right, just one dragon at a time, please. As you can see, we've been doing some spawning.
He came from the surface.
Yeah, the dragon will chase you everywhere. He is one of the bosses who is aggressive enough to take any path to follow you, even if he's outside of a loading zone. You can see that the freezing is extremely effective against him. Just a freeze and a kick or summon tentacle will kill him very easily. And we'll go ahead and show off the missile damage. You can see he's taking 75 there. And if we hit him in the head, he's taking the full damage. So hitting in the head with explosive damage is the way you get the full damage output. As you can see, he really does a lot of damage. The melee immunity would be lovely. Let's go ahead and show that off really quick. Melee immunity, there we go. So now we're just going to be able to stand on the boss, and his damage is very minimal. Not very much that I need to worry about. You can see that we block all of that damage, which is lovely.
But it is interesting that the damage actually isn't melee. That
right.
It's actually just a bite attack that melee immunity happens to block. And you'll see that same thing happening with one other boss that is also Worm.
Right. And one of the big things to note is, if you're wondering why we're mentioning that in the first place, curse glitches exist where you can use like a little bit of an exploit to become immune to any curse that exists in the game. And melee happens to be one of those damage types, so that would not help you to become immune to this boss. Now, as for like killing this boss, he's incredibly weak to anything that deals pretty effective damage. You can see we just use a plasma beam with some homing there. It'll home to the head, and that'll absolutely rip through him. He will die to any sufficient damage wand. But if you're really in a pinch, make sure that you are, you've got some form of freeze. Like Circle of Stillness will only freeze his head, so make sure that you get that on it, and you'll be able to melee kill him. And
so the target damage to hit is 3000. He has 3000 HP and takes full damage from slice and projectiles. So if your wand deals 3000 DPS, you will kill him in 1 second.
Right. So a great example would be, you know, we've got a target dummy here, and, you know, you can see that we're easily hitting around 5,000 with this super simple build. So yeah, there's all sorts of different strategies you can use to destroy this boss. And yeah, I guess there's not really too much else to say about the dragon. He drops a tier 6 wand. He drops the unlockables of all of the orbit spells once you kill him. And if you go outside of the range of the dragon area and come back, there is a small chance that the area despawns and you will not be able to spawn the dragon in. It's just like a weird problem that happens with area loading sometimes. And that's pretty much the dragon. Other than this dragon spot is actually a really fantastic spot to go. If you go straight right from here, it's a great waypoint to get to the Leviathan portals. We need to slay the Leviathan to unlock these, but we will be covering that in this video in this video series as well. But yeah, once again, thank you so much, Latali, for joining me. Let's go ahead and move on to the next boss. Thank you for watching and subscribe and all that.
Watching.
Yeah. Woo!